Hi everyone, Sajid Amit here, and in this discussion, I want to talk about my impressions on some cables that I've acquired recently. And these are cables I'm pretty excited about, and they're of very different price ranges. So I'll talk about a Moon Silver Dragon cable that I've tried with my ZMF Atrium and my ZMF Verite Closed. I'm the most excited to talk about Norn audio cables. Norn, as a lot of people know, makes some of the most ergonomic and pretty and great sounding cables in the hobby. And Trevor is the man behind Norn, wonderful per human being and person, and great to deal with. And yes, he's a superb craftsman. So each of his cables have a very different look. So this is my Verite closed, and I'm using Norn's Skollvar with my Verite closed. So I'll talk about the Skollvar, very pretty cables and very unique looking as well. I'll talk about another cable from Norne, which is the Vygarde, and I got a silver boosted copper version. So it's a fusion cable, silver and copper. I just requested Trevor to add a little bit more silver, which he did. So these are jacketed, however. So I'm using these with the atriums. So I'll talk about what these sound like, and of course, what this feel like, and all that. And I have a super expensive cable here that I want to talk about. So it is a cable by JPS Labs, the parent company of Abyss. Abyss apparently tunes this headphone. This is their flagship 1266 5TC that I've talked about in a lot of my previous videos. It is one of my favorite headphones, and so Abyss tunes this headphone with this cable, is what is known, and it's a hyper expensive cable. It's by JPS Labs, and it's a hyper expensive cable, and it's super thick, and some might say cumbersome, and some might even say not ergonomic, and yeah. So the cable, I'll talk about this and how this sounds, and like I said, I'll draw references to the Moon Audio Silver Dragon because I feel like a lot of people own the Moon Audio Silver Dragon and have, heard the Moon Audio Sound. So I'll talk about the Moon Audio Sound as well. So, guys, I know that cables and cable debates arouse a lot of passion, and audiophiles are zealots. Like, we do have very strong positions in whatever we have positions on. Cables have been the source of a lot of debates and controversy on HeadFi, on HeadFi threads, on other forums as well. So I don't want to get into any of these debates. I have seen science about cables. I just want to say that I'm not someone who's averse to science. I'm an academic myself. I studied math at Dartmouth College. Yeah, I mean, I've been around science all my life. Have taken physics, engineering courses, and I'm an academic, so I'm very acquainted with the scientific method, so to speak. However, that's not what I'm here for. Science is not a part of what I do in this hobby. This hobby is basically where I listen to music, and I love sharing my impressions on what I feel are outcomes of my attempts at critical listening. And if this helps you, then great. If it doesn't, I would kindly request you to not start a war on my comments in my comment section or elsewhere with regard to cables. Moving on to what my cables sound like. First of all, the Norn stuff that I have in front of me. So I do think and I do perceive that the Skollvar, which is copper, sounds different from the Vygarde, which is a fusion cable. And at first, I tried the Skollvar with my atriums, and I thought that the atriums benefited more from the greater incisiveness and a slightly greater sense of clarity that the Vygarde gives to my atriums. I don't necessarily think that it's a better cable than this Skollvar. I do think it's a synergy issue, and you and given and what sonic goals you have. So the Skollvar, on the other hand, I think is a pretty natural and organic sounding cable, as is the Vygarde. But this, I think, does aid the VC signature a little more. This is a very nice Caribbean wood, redwood splitter. So Trevor takes a lot of pains to make his splitters right and pretty and nice and aesthetically, match your headphones. So big shout out to Trevor for all the great work he's done over the years for us hobbyists. So yeah, so this is a Skollvar, and this has the benefit of adding a bit more decay, I think, to the VC bass as well as the atrium bass. The atrium has superb bass. It's very punchy and impactful and powerful, much more so than the VC, I think. Especially with the pads that I'm using, which are the Universe lambskin pads, perforated. So I prefer having or using my Vygarde, silver boosted Vygarde with my atriums, but I prefer the Skollvar with my VCs because the VCs I use for more casual listening, especially when there's noise around me. So VCs are a way in which I sort of kick back and it's a lush, warm presentation. I use the Artura lambskin pads, which aid to the warmth of the VCs. So the Skollvar I think is a nice way to sort of round off the chain, and I use my VCs with my Hall Audio Maydag, usually with HQ player and this filter that makes the VC slightly more incisive, and the Felix Audio OTL, the Felix Audio Euphoria Anniversary Edition, which I own, bought with my own money, and I'll talk about it in a future discussion or video. And so the Skollvar is just wonderful with my chain, and given my sonic goals for the VC and given my use cases. So I really like the Skollvar and I highly recommend it. And of course, it's very interesting looking. Its aesthetics are, it's very, first of all, it's very supple and easy to use. It's easy to coil around your headphone stand and all that. And of course, Norn uses these wonderful hydraulic connectors. I'm not sure if you can see this properly, right? So yeah, and 1/4 inch because that's what the Euphoria needs, and great cables, wonderful cables, big fan. Now to talk a little bit more about Norn Audio's Vygarde, like I said, I got the silver boosted version, and this I do think can be perceived as slightly more clear all through the frequency spectrum, and this added sense of clarity and a slightly more incisiveness compared to the Skollvar I think works really well with the atrium, because the atrium is a very dynamic and incisive headphone. The atrium is sort of like ZMF bridging its signature while maintaining all that is great and pure about its signature, its warmth, its tonality, its timbre, with the incisiveness and dynamism of a Focal headphone, of a Focal Utopia, for instance. So the atriums are wonderful, and I've been a big fan ever since I got them. So I use the Vygarde, the silver boosted version with the atriums, and works really well for me. I listen to all genres with the atrium and the Vygarde. So I got the black jacketed version. If you look at the braid, you'll see his craftsmanship, Trevor's craftsmanship. They're all perfectly weaved and braided. His splitters, like I said, he takes great pains in ensuring his, the aesthetic match that a lot of audiophiles like with their headphones. So in this case, the atrium, of course, in my atrium has a silver grill, so the splitter has silver on it, and is meant to be an aesthetic match, and it is. A lot of audiophiles care about this kind of stuff. A lot of you will not care about this kind of stuff. So it really depends on what you're going for. But sonically, these are wonderful. Aesthetically, ergonomically, they're wonderful for me. So I highly recommend Norn's Vygarde as well. If you want more silver in your cable, you can of course request Trevor, and I did, and it really worked out for me. So big shout out to you, Trevor, for your wonderful patient service. I had lots of questions for him. We got into detailed discussions on where he sources his stuff from and his general idea of the cable part of the hobby, and how a lot of manufacturers are overpricing cables, etc., which they are. Now, speaking of overpriced cables, I want to talk about my own superconductor, which, for the sake of a disclaimer, was bought with my own money, was not bought from JPS Labs. I got this from a dealer who did give me a discount. Otherwise, these are super expensive, and even with the discount, it was massive. I think they retail for around $2,600, which is so expensive. I mean, I waited on this. I didn't want to get this right away. I spent whatever money I wanted to on other parts of my stable, my headphones, my source gears, and then finally I decided, okay, I'm ready for a superconductor. And I did also audition a superconductor in my house for at least a week, I think, before finally pulling the trigger. And they do have a sonic benefit to my TCs. So these, of course, are the flagship of Abyss headphones, the 1266 Phi TCs. regarded by many to be the best headphone in the business, and I also think it is one of the best. So when I first got the Abyss with the stock cable, I also had the Moon Audio Silver Dragon because I had heard the Abyss of stock before and I never liked it. Of the stock, I think what the stock doesn't do well is that, first of all, the stock is still very resolving, and but what the stock does not do well, the stock cable, which is also very janky. I don't want to show it on my video, but you can always look it up. The stock cable is very etched and rough in the treble. It's rough around the lower treble and kind of grainy and etched around the upper treble. The Abyss so this headphone has a recessed mid range, and even on the stock, it's just accentuated somehow. The bass, however, is fantastic on the stock, as is the sound stage, but I don't really like the stock cable. I got the Moon Audio Silver Dragon cable soon after I got the stock. That has a slightly warmer tonality, smoother, even though it's supposed to be a silver cable. And although Moon Audio says that their Silver Dragon cables are analytical, I don't think they're as analytical as other Silver Dragon cables that I've used. I do think that Moon Audio cables are slightly on the smoother side, warmer side, have good bass, etc. Good extension, good treble extension, but still come off as somewhat smooth. So the Moon Audio Silver Dragon cable was an upgrade over the stock. And then I had this Indian cable manufacturer. His name is Niranjan, and I've done a video about his cables, ear audio cables. I got Niranjan to make me his silver cable, his ultra premium silver cable from my TCs, and he, is great to work with as well. He sources his silver, very high quality silver from Hong Kong. His cables are not as thick, which might be a good thing or a bad thing for you depending on who you are. But I did notice that his silver cables just overall improve the TC sound across the board. These improvements are not massive. From the stock to the Moon Audio, given my sonic goals, I thought the improvement was noticeable, 5 to 10% perhaps. But from Moon to this, it'll come down to a flavor thing. The difference in technical performance is there. I would say around 2 to 3% perhaps, not huge. But with Niranjan Silver Dragon cable, silver, high purity silver cable, I think what happened was the TC became, overall there was more clarity across the frequency spectrum, and that also brought out the bass texture better than I got on the Moon. And it was less smooth than the Moon, but it wasn't rough. I really liked Ear Audio Silver cable for my TCs. And then I got this. I would say that this is overall an improvement across the board, other than ergonomics, because look at this. It's an extremely, extremely janky and thick and just cumbersome to deal with. It doesn't coil very well around the headphone stand. It's heavy and it's just annoying sometimes. And the way it's structured, like I might have talked about before, is I've discussed this in my written reviews as well. It's sort of structured in a way that it's just two separate cables entering this connector, this JPS connector. A lot of superconductor owners will then coil this or weave this or coil this rather on their own and then add like a Velcro, which will act as a splitter. So it's not the easiest to use, but sonically it does pay dividends. Sonically it's wonderful. So the thing that's happening sonically with the superconductor is that it's a thicker presentation. It's a thicker presentation which makes vocals thicker and just brings your attention more to the vocals. So I just found that as soon as I switched to this, it did require some getting used to, but overall in a couple of days, I was listening to a lot more vocal tracks on my TC than I've ever have. Superconductor is what you need if you want your TC to become a better all-rounder with regard to playing all genres well. So I no longer listen to only rock and metal with my superconductor cables. I listen to everything. Interestingly, I find that I listen to a lot of female vocals using the superconductor cable. Another Headfire, his name is Simorag, Simorag, look him up on Headfire, has come to this conclusion using the superconductor cables independently of me. He's a great person to sort of read reviews of. He's not a professional reviewer, but he has, and I'm not, neither am I, but he also writes written impressions on Headfire, so do look out for his written impressions, and he's arrived at very similar conclusions, and I've not read his reviews until I bought my superconductor. So it's interesting that other people have arrived at the same conclusion, as have people who have come to my house and A/B'd this cable with the other cables I have with my TC. It is a perceptible upgrade. How much in terms of percentage? Maybe, 5 to 10%. Some would say 2%. It really depends on your sonic goals, honestly. So when I say 5 to 10%, it's not 5 to 10% in terms of technical performance. It's probably 2%, right? But then overall, because how you perceive tonality changes, because a thicker presentation that makes the TC slightly more organic sounding and lusher, I think my overall enjoyment has increased. So I would not part with it. I love this cable. I would recommend it if you have money to burn and if you want the absolute best sound for your TC. However, all discussions on value get thrown out of the window when you get into a cable of this price range. Like I said, it's close to $3,000. I have been impressed enough that I've now ordered a DHC, a double helix cable, a Preon 4 for my HiFi and Skollvaras and other headphones I have that have a 3.5 millimeter connector at the cup side. So super expensive cable, but is it snake oil? No, if you ask me, it's not snake oil. It's a perceptible upgrade. However, it might not be the right upgrade for you. Even if you want an Abyss, maybe that's something you put off for down the road after you have invested in an amplifier and a jack. By no means am I recommending you spend big sums of money. I think you're better off, spending your money on a Norne audio cable. If you want a silver cable, get in touch with him. If you want a copper cable or a hybrid, get in touch with Trevor. He's a wonderful deal with, and I highly recommend Norn. However, if you're that connoisseur who has money to burn, and if you want the absolute best performance with your TC, you might want to consider a superconductor cable. The Moon Silver Dragon cables are pretty widely recognized and widely known. They have been reviewed before. Like I said, the Silver Dragon from Moon is a good cable. I do perceive a smoothness to the sound. That might be your thing, might be your jam, might be suitable for certain headphones more than others. So check them out as well. That's it for me. I'll drop links to Norn's website, to the Superconductor as well if you want to. These are not going to be affiliate links. I've never once dropped an affiliate link. The hobby, like I've said to people before, is not how I make money. It's how I honestly spend money. And the reason I do these reviews is basically, just to stay updated with the hobby, engage you guys, because conversations are a big part of my enjoyment in this hobby. So that's basically what it is. Thank you for watching. If this was useful, give this a like, subscribe to my channel, and of course, stay tuned for my next one. Bye-bye.